We're doing this.
No, let's just not.
Everybody's here
Yeah, we'll probably even
this year.
for a while.
I think this entire 2022. Pretty sure.
So is the game on now?
7:30.
I bet against the Flames.
I saw it.
Oh,
He gave me 2-1 odds.
I know, I saw that.
So I gave 2-1 odds this year.
Like, flashback.
hopefully that's you're gonna jinx it.
I don't think I'm that important. That's the amount of actions for it.
You know, if they win, you have to bet against them every time now.
No. And when I'm just gonna send you $10 in transfer. That's the end.
This is people sitting back there. Okay, we're live. Excellent.
So that's live.
Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order. May 9th, regular council meeting. And we're going to get right to it because I think there's a game tonight. There better be, or Mike and I are dressed in the wrong gear. With that said, first thing on the agenda is always the agenda. Look for a motion to adopt. Councillor Reid.
Also move with the adoption of the agenda as presented.
Thank you. All those in favor of the agenda? Carried. And Councillor Flowers, did you have a chance to look at the minutes of our last meeting?
It's at the last meeting.
Thank you so much. All those in favor of the minutes? Carried. I like how we're moving through those things now. First on our agenda tonight, past those two motions, is a delegation, from the Rotary Club of Cochrane in regards to an Indigenous Innovation Center. I'm just going to flip to the right page here and introduce, I believe I know everybody, but just want to get names correct. Mr. Michael Bopp, Mr. Kevin Shire, Ms. Tina Fox, Trent Fox, and Daryl Kootenay from the Rotary Club of Cochrane to present. So I could get, I think, Mr. Kevin Shire coming to the podium. Kevin, you're representing the group tonight? Good evening.
I am. We'll have three speakers come up, both myself, Michael Bopp, and Trent will come. Unfortunately, Tina is not feeling well tonight, and Daryl is on his way with a UN delegation of some kind to Barcelona, which trumped coming here tonight. Not sure how that works, but we'll find out when he gets back. And
My apologies, it's Tina. Yes.
so good afternoon, I guess. We're afternoon because you're starting at 5:30. It's technically still afternoon. Mayor, Council, Administration, and thank you for having us today for our presentation. And I'll just make one small correction before I start. As opposed to an Indigenous Innovation Center, the proper framework for it should be an Indigenous placemaking initiative, because that's what it really is placemaking. I'm here tonight with honor to represent the Rotary Club and what we do in Cochrane, and bring along with me two people who are much more well-versed in what we're working to attain here with the Indigenous Placemaking Initiative in Cochrane. I'll give you a little bit of history about how we got here, because I think it's important that we all just put a few little pieces in place to understand why we're here. A number of years ago, two Rotary members, Michael and Judy Bopp, put together an Indigenous awareness training session, which a lot of the senior staff and administration and some councillors participated in with the Rotarians in our community. And the whole idea was, how can Rotary be better for our community? How can Rotary help our community build and grow and do better things? After that, we also started a community needs assessment process. And through that community needs assessment process, we discovered that Indigenous people really have no home here in Cochrane. There's no one place that marks anything that is in respect of them. There's nothing in Cochrane that talks in depth about their history, what they did, how they lived, and how it all came to be that we are where we are today. And also through our community needs assessment, we discovered that there are a lot of people who call Cochrane home that we weren't necessarily aware of. But Cochrane is a center for a lot of people from Tsuut'ina to the south, Stoney Nakoda to the west, and a lot of Indigenous people who identify as Indigenous right here in Cochrane, approximately 10% of our population. And what we were really trying to do in the Rotary world is we were trying to find out how can Rotary better serve Cochrane. We know that there's Rotary parks and we know there's Rotary playgrounds and we know there are traditional Rotary projects where they build something and then they move on. But we're looking for things as we move forward in reconciliation and truth as to how we can have a larger, better, and longer lasting impact on Cochrane. What started out as a conversation, and we've had conversations with the mayor, with your chief administration officer about this initiative. We've also had council participate with us and partner with us on placing a council member, Susan Flowers, on our steering committee. And we started our fundraising because we need money to make things operate. But what we need in conjunction with that money that's as important, if not more important, is a place. And through our conversations with the mayor, the CAO, we learned that the Visitor Information Center was going to be moving from its current location over to the station sometime this year. I'm not sure of the exact timeline and where things are at today versus where they were at 3 months ago. But we know that the Visitor Information Center, where it is, was picked for a reason because it's in a visible place, it's downtown, and it's a place where people walk and they can walk up and down our historic Main Street and be part of Cochrane. And one of the ideas put forward was, what if we took the Visitor Information Center and transitioned it into this Indigenous place that we would like to have in Cochrane? And we did get a commitment from the town to be partners on this project, and we want to move to the next level of this project. And the next level is committing to space. And we know that tonight, this is a presentation to be accepted by you as information without a hard decision to be made, but we'd like to move it to the next step so that a decision is made, and it's made so that the town can elevate that partnership with the Rotary Club and the Indigenous Placemaking Team, which will eventually become a standalone nonprofit organization, and secure that space so that we can have that available for the next 5 years. Without having a place, it's really hard to fundraise, it's hard to get grants, it's hard to put everything in place that we need in order to move forward with the project if we don't have our feet on the ground and a place we can call home. That's a bit of the history of how we got here and why we got here. I'm now going to turn it over to Trent, and Trent is going to give us more information because he's very qualified on telling us more about what the center means and why it's important and what it could do for our community and for the Indigenous people in our community. So if you'd like, I'd turn it over to Trent and he can lead us through those next steps. Thank you.
I'm Boston. I'm Boston. My name is Trent Fox. As a member of the Western First Nation, I am part of the greater Ethka Nakota, Oyade, Stoney Nakoda Nation. We are Nakota, Sioux, but we are also Nehiyaw, Cree. Many Ethka have Cree ancestry because we were allies of the Cree and the Anishinaabe. As together, we were known as the Iron Confederacy, who traded with the Tahamungibin, the Shuswap, in the Okanagan, and the Iroquois along the Great Lakes. So that's part of our history in terms of the Ethka people. And I wanted to talk about why Indigenous placemaking is a good initiative. Excuse me. So the town of Cochrane is our urban hub. It's where we shop for our groceries, get our clothing, buy vehicles. It's where we are patrons of the various restaurants that exist. It's also where we do our banking, Over $50 million in funds flows through Cochrane World Bank, and that's the bank that we've used for more than 40 years. Excuse me. Just speaking from personal experience, most Canadians don't know about Indigenous issues or people. I was part of a cohort of 22 master's degree students, and of those 22, 4 were Native. And so of the 18 remaining, only 1 knew about. I had posed a question, what area First Nation do you know of? And the only First Nation they were aware of was Tsuut'ina, and that was because of the controversy surrounding the ring road. And so First Nations history, the truth, is not told in our K-12 curriculum in Canada. And so our children are not educated or socialized to understand Indigenous issues that we face today. It is time to change this, and creating an Indigenous Indigenous Center would be a great start. At an Indigenous Center, we can educate those who are interested in learning and start to foster an understanding of why colonialism has affected our people even today. The issue of generational trauma continues to affect our people. Most people don't understand why that is. We need to foster that understanding. Hopefully in the future, that can be also done in school, but at present that's not the case. A center would be a place where we can share knowledge, Indigenous knowledge and wisdom, and hold friendship dances. We call these dances the round dance. And we hold various round dances throughout the year. There are some people from Cochrane who do attend. The kindest person I know, Pat Verge, is one of those who always is in attendance and has many friends in Morley. So she knows about tea and bannock, as she would like to joke. Excuse me. An Indigenous Center would also be a place where people can reconnect with their heritage, with relatives, communities, and also to reclaim languages. I bring to your attention documentary filmmaker Eli Hurdle. He's the one who produced Voices on the Rise, and that documentary began, oddly enough, in Victoria. His mother was part of the 60s scoop, and so he grew up in Victoria not knowing his Nehiyaw Cree ancestry, and his mother had long been disconnected from her community. At a friendship center in Victoria, Eli had the opportunity to meet, I forgot her name, sorry, but she met an elder who was Cree, and so together he started learning some of the Cree language, which took him on a 2-year journey, eventually back to his home reserve of Wabasca, Alberta. And so from that friendship center came a reconnection with his people, with his culture, his language, and a documentary that can be viewed online at your pleasure. It's called Voices on the Rise. Right now, because of this lack of education, there's a negative stereotype that we face. I walk around Walmart, often followed by secret shoppers or closed employees. I had an encounter with one young man who I told that unless he breaks this cycle of mistrust, his children will be following my grandchildren. And so somehow we need to start educating the general public about First Nations people, issues, and the impact of colonization. Lastly, I would like to say that an Indigenous Center would be a beautiful and gracious act of reconciliation, because this area is where the Ithka lived pre-contact. This area was the traditional wintering grounds of our people. It was not our territory, but rather the land that we used and occupied with other nomadic tribes, including the Tsuut'ina, the Niitsitapi, the Blackfoot, the Tahmungabin, the Shuswap, the Kidonihe, the Kootenai, and other First Nations. So thank you for this opportunity. I thank you.
Hello. Nice to see you all. Did you guys know that you're sitting under a medicine wheel, by the way? Did you ever think of that? It's a circle with 4 directions, which is a traditional Indigenous symbol for how we're all connected to one another. The black, white, yellow, and red peoples of the world, the north, south, east, and west. Kind of interesting. I didn't even know that that was here. I'm going to tell you a little bit about kind of where this is going, sort of to try to spark your imagination a little bit about why this is really a good thing to do for a town. Lots of towns are doing it, by the way. Calgary has just voted to give land and to build a gathering place for Indigenous people. This is a movement across the country that's happening. But I'd like to just try to imagine some of these ideas, that when this center is operating and happening, a lot of Indigenous people are going to be gathering. It's going to be a focal point for them for community building. You know, the other day, Thursday, I think it was, Councillor McFadden and Flowers and about 20 other people gathered up in Frank Wills Hall. We put out this call in the newspaper and said, people who identify as Indigenous, come to this meeting. Well, we had 16 people come out, and most of them we didn't know and had never met them before. And they hadn't met each other either. They were Métis, and they were Mohawk, and they were Cree, and they were from all over the place. And they came here and they said, we're hungry for a community. We want to be part of something. And it's so wonderful that this is happening. And they said, let us help, and we'll bring others. We will make a circle, and that circle will grow. I really wish you could have been there for that. It was really quite something to feel that energy. You can ask the councillors about that. But so that would be one thing. A community building process would be going on, and it would be visible in the town. It would be part and parcel of the fabric of the town. But another part is that non-Indigenous people would also have a gathering place to focalize their interest in supporting and working with Indigenous people. That's also important, because there's a lot of them, and it's growing. And in fact, I think a part of this movement is going to become a sort of an ally circle, a circle of people that want to help with this. Because we even had people crash our meeting the other day who weren't invited. So people are really interested in this. Then just to go on and try to visualize what is this place and what does it do all the time? Well, one of the things it does is that when Indigenous people come and they're looking for services in town, it's a navigational point. It's a place where they can go and they can be guided and sort of pointed in the right direction and help to find the services they need. And if those services are not there, those services can be supported to learn how to be the kind of services that Indigenous people need. And that's sort of another service that comes out of the center. It's kind of a consultation, training, technical support center for all the agencies in town that interface with Indigenous people, and many do, but a lot of them don't do it so well. It's something that a lot of agencies need to learn how to do. And then the center is going to become really a popular place for tourists, a place where they can go and they can find Indigenous art, authentic Indigenous art and crafts, but also that they can plug into Indigenous tourist opportunities like horse trail trips up into the mountains or teepee camps for young people. And this is going to be one of the businesses that this center is going to operate in order to support itself as a kind of a tourist attraction hub for Indigenous related issues. And that's one of the ideas, that this center will eventually be able to stand on its own financially by operating its own businesses and through the grants and contracts that it makes with the provincial government and the federal government. There's a lot of finances going on right now for Indigenous programming in cities across the country. And because the town will have provided space, that this is going to make the operation actually sustainable and possible. That it's not going to go under because it can't afford to live somewhere or can't afford to do things. It's manageable. We have a business plan, and the business plan lays out clearly at least a basic minimum of what we need in order to be able to run the center. And that's about $150,000 a year, which is really kind of peanuts in terms of fundraising for social programming. I mean, it's a couple of salaries and a little bit of operating money, that's all it is. So we know that that's achievable, and the Rotary Club is standing behind the process of working on that and building it, and everybody's chipping in, writing proposals and figuring out what to put in them and all that sort of thing. So that's happening right now. And lastly, this center is going to serve as a kind of an Indigenous embassy, a place where all matters Indigenous can be referred for advice when council needs it, or when administration needs it, when you're encountering, I don't know, archaeological sites, or you have to have some kind of consultation with Indigenous people before you can move forward. This is the place where you can go, and that can be facilitated so it can happen. And I guess beyond that, I just want to say that there's a bunch of us in the town that are sticking our necks out on this. Like, I call this the Giraffe Project, because we're just like out there and trying to make something happen that is starting from nothing and moving into something isn't easy. But we're really proud and happy that the town has stepped forward and offered to be part of and parcel with us. Through your mayor and CEO, they've said, look, we want to be a part of this. Now, what that actually means when it push comes to shove, well, we hope it means space. We don't really think it needs to mean money beyond space. We think we can manage the rest. But we think that it's the time now for this sort of thing to be happening across Canada. And we invite you to become part of that with us. Now, what I've just said, it's sort of in your notes, but not. So I've written it up in a kind of an outline form, and I'm just going to put this here. People can pick one up. So it's probably an easy summary of understanding, well, what is this place anyway? What's the idea, and what are they going to do there? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Trent. We're now open for questions, and Michael and Trent can come back up here and join me, because they're going to be much better at answering questions about this than I am, I'm sure. I'm just the messenger. So, through the chair, any questions for our delegation today?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Shire. It's a pleasure to have you here tonight, and I should have pointed out you guys didn't need to go back and forth. You could all stay up front and stand up and be awkward with you as you are right now, but you're welcome to come to the podium. You don't have to traipse back and forth, and there may be questions for each of you to answer, so thank you for that.
We weren't sure if the new barrier was for us, or
no,
if it was just
it's just a fixture in the room.
Well, we figured we could jump over it if we had to.
It could be conceived as a hurdle, yes. So you did mention in your presentation that we're, and it is a recommended action tonight to accept as information, and I think largely that, and administration has pointed out in the background that council can ask administration obviously to have this come back and review your request and bring back a fulsome report from administration at a future council meeting. So With that, I see there's lights on. We'll open it up to questions. Councillor McFadden?
Yes, thank you very much. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your presentation. It's, as you mentioned, I attended the Thursday session, and I've been doing a little bit of independent volunteering with the committee to try to advance this community building in all the different iterations is important to me, and it's been a pleasure to be involved in this project. And I just wanted to highlight, like, the Thursday meeting, as you said, there were, I think, 19 people that showed up, Indigenous peoples to show up that wanted to be part of seeing themselves. And what I heard often in those conversations was how they don't see themselves in Cochrane. They don't see themselves reflected in either our places or in our community building. And that was kind of a heart-wrenching moment for me. And so I'm certainly inspired, you know, by these conversations and by your efforts. And I appreciate your presentation tonight. So I did want to ask, I think, 2 questions. The first, if you could just provide what kind of feedback or support are you getting from both the Indigenous and non-Indigenous members of our community? And secondly, what's your timeline to get started?
Timeline to get started is we are already started. After the meeting the other day, the people, there's a committee in Rotary that is supporting this process. And then there's an Indigenous Advisory Committee that's going to become the board of this new center. And so we've been consulting with all of these people. And the first and immediate decision was we got to do something right away to follow up on this meeting, because there's a lot of people who we didn't even know existed in town that want to be part of something, and we should take advantage of it now. So we're actually meeting on Wednesday night to set the next community circle gathering, and we're going to invite a lot more people to that and just try to make the process grow, but they're saying they want to be part of it. And in answer to your question of, I've gotten probably 25 or 30 phone calls in the last 2 months from people who, non-Indigenous people in Cochrane, who say, I want to be part of this thing, how can we help? And I say, well, we just got to wait a little while, because the Indigenous people this is their project, and we're trying not to run ahead of them. So, because we are following a principle, nothing about us without us. It means this is about Indigenous people, so we can't do that without them. So we're slowly moving forward. We've got plans, and it's unfolding. We don't have a building yet, but we are going to start having gatherings and activities right away. Is that enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. That does cover the question. I will make the recommendation that council accept the presentation as information, with the understanding that as part of that administration will review the request and then bring a recommendation for consideration at a future council meeting. And I'll turn it over to my colleagues for more questions.
Thank you, Councillor McFadden. Councillor Padeco?
Thanks.
Deputy Mayor?
Thanks for the information. I'm sorry that I missed your meeting. It may have been in my calendar and I may have not seen it, or it may not have been in my calendar. I'm not exactly too sure, but I am sorry that I wasn't there to support it. I think that we all realize how important creating good relationships with our Indigenous neighbors is. Certainly is something that's probably on all of our minds these days. I'm just curious though as to what the actual eventual ask might be. You did say, I believe that somebody said it was $150,000 roughly to financially support the center. And is that something that you're looking for an ongoing cash commitment? I'm just trying to understand the amount that's eventually going to come forward of what the ask actually is.
Thank you for the question. The ask from the town will be for the space. The operating costs, and largely we also believe the renovation costs that will be required will be covered by funds that are being jointly raised by the Indigenous Action Committee and the Rotary Club. And we are looking for a partnership to say, here's your spot, we'll make sure that you guys have a home, and not the operational costs.
Okay, perfect. And I understand that that report will come forward to us from administration. Would this center be open to other, I guess, I want to say cultural groups or marginalized groups or people that need space? Because to me, that's something very important. I certainly don't want to take away from the Indigenous side of what this center is, but I do believe that when I look at the overall picture, there are many cultures, there are many different people that have some of the same concerns of not feeling like they're a part of our community, and I'd like the space to be an all-inclusive space if it could be, or maybe that was already your plan and I'm just not aware of that.
Excuse me. Yes, so that was already part of our plan. We are hoping to include as many different people as possible. And so, for example, Ukrainian Canadians and other Canadians will have that opportunity to come to the center and learn about Indigenous issues for sure, but also to use it as their own place of gathering if it's somewhere necessary. So it won't be exclusive to just the First Nations. And ideally, from their experience, I'm hoping that they will be learning more about Indigenous issues as they come through the doors. So yeah, it will be open to other
Perfect.
ethnic groups. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very important to me. I believe that Cochrane is home to everybody. It doesn't matter what you are or what your culture is or where you come from, but I'm happy to hear that, and you absolutely have my support for that.
I'd just like to add to that question that I'm back to that medicine wheel again, that circle with the 4 directions. And there's stories connected to that, old stories that were here long before Cochrane ever was here. And one of them is that the people of the 4 directions were sent out, black, white, yellow, and red people. They were sent out all over the world with gifts. And then they eventually, over a long time period, would develop those gifts. And then they would need to be called back together into one circle. And the reason is because the world would be in such a state that they would need the gifts of all 4 directions in order to really make a difference and really to bring a better world for everybody. So that's what the underlying philosophy of this center is.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Fedeko. Councillor Reid?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. My questions are asked in the spirit of just simply learning as we kind of venture down this. So I understand we have a business plan that's available to us and will be part of the next package in terms of administrations bringing it forward, because that, for me personally, is really important. I think in terms of the business plan, the space actually has a value, and the associated costs with should be renovations or ongoing facilities in terms of the utilities of that. But I'm curious, I have 2 questions. One is, why not the RCMP building? I recognize it's kind of out of the way, but my feeling is if you build it, they will come. And the other question is, why 5 years? Why not 2 years or 3 years if there is a plethora of funding available provincially, federally, from other sources? Why would the town be in a position of having to go 5 years as opposed to 2 years or 3 years as an incubator to get this thing started?
Thank you for your question. We haven't considered the RCMP building. There's a lot of baggage there.
Fair enough.
I'm just going to leave it at that because it hasn't been something we've even talked about at the Indigenous Action Committee Circle. It is out of the way as well, physically. The second part of your question, why 5 years? Stability. Stability is what we're looking for. If the town makes a decision and says you've only got 2 years to make this thing happen, we have to live with that. But we think a reasonable ask for the cost of the space that's there now is to look at a 5-year window and give us stability to build and explore. One of the things that we're trying to avoid putting pressure on is you got to make money right away. You got to make this thing profitable. You got to be out there doing this, doing that. This takes time. It's all about relationships. It's about building, getting to know each other. You can't necessarily do that in a short amount of time. And so stability is really what we're looking for.
I guess the question of partnership and what's reasonable is part of that discussion. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor Flowers?
Thank you for your presentation and all the work that you've done with the Rotary. It's commendable to see you getting into this. It's groundbreaking for Cochrane, and it's just so long overdue. So I'm pleased to be part of it, and I was happy to see the success of the first circle the other night. people went away with such hope and concern for the future, making things better, wanting to make a difference and get to know each other. So they were already talking about the next meetings and what we're going to do and what food we're going to bring in, where we're going to host the meetings and who all we can invite. So that was really good news. I know that it needs a home sooner than later, and I think there's just so much potential and so many grants available and so many opportunities that you'll probably outgrow the space in no time. I don't know what else I can do to help at this point, but other than show my support and hope that we can help make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flowers. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation. I just had a couple clarity questions as I read through your package here, which, by the way, has all kinds of great information. It's more than we often get from groups when they're coming here with proposals, and so I appreciate that. As I'm looking through your methodology, it talks about how the center will organize quarterly Indigenous action councils and consultations and monthly friendship feasts and another, community action circles. I appreciate all that detail. I was just kind of to understand the vision and where the town funding perspective comes in. Will the center be like the Cochrane Visitor Center currently is, where somebody can walk in on business hours on a weekday, and what would be happening there? Would there be somebody staffing it, or is it just a place to meet to do some of the methodology things here? I'm just hoping for some clarity there, if we even have that much vision for the space yet.
Yeah, that could have been, we have a full proposal that has a lot of that stuff in it. But basically, you're looking at an office that's open all the time in the normal working hours, and there's staff that's working there, and they're running programs out of there. But there are also a large contingent of volunteers around the center that are helping to put on a lot of the activities, because we're starting off with an expectation that we have to have one very good leader, a technical staff person with Indigenous programming and experience and kind of a presence in the community that can lead and help develop programs, and then an administrative support person, and that's about, plus your office equipment and running a few activities, that's going to use up $150,000. And that's what we meant by minimum. Like, it's kind of like if you want to have a car, you ought to have wheels, But beyond that, then the programs will grow through both community volunteer activity and through funding that we get. And so you can add a program when you've got a person to do the program, sort of thing. That's how we plan to grow. Is that getting along to answering your question?
Yeah, thank you. If I understand, so that you'd have one office administrative person there and then mostly volunteer led, I understand the concept.
Plus a leader though. You really need an Indigenous executive director. That's a real, not just a manager, but a leader that attracts the community and draws on their energy and can bring things together and make things happen, can imagine a future and help to create it. But I wanted to say something about this. Why a 5-year commitment? I want to go back to that question because just any of you who ever tried to run a business might know that the expectation that your business was going to be flourishing in 2 years is not very realistic. Businesses just don't go that fast unless you're selling hula hoops at the right moment in history. But it's reasonable to think that you can grow a business, even if you want to look at this as a business. It's a social business. You can grow it over time, and we think that you need a little bit of stability and insurance for that period of time. We might not need support for all that time, but I think we might also. Are we getting to your answers, to answer your questions though?
Yeah, no, my question was answered. Thank you very much. And as a couple other people have said around the table, I look forward to attending future events and hearing more from your group. Thank you.
And we would love to invite you if you would be interested in coming.
I think you're hearing interest. We're all interested. I have a couple questions. I don't see any other lights on. One is, what does success look like? We talk about, and we don't have to talk about a time or a financial commitment of any potential dollar amount. What does success look like in the Indigenous Placemaking Center?
Michael's going to be happy to answer that for you because we just had that conversation on the phone, and then when we got here, we said, what does success look like? Because a lot of people's definition of success is you're making money or you've got 1,000 of this or 1,000 of that. So
Please approach the bench.
That is answer to your good question.
Okay. Well, and I mean, the reason I ask it is, it might seem obvious, but as your center has been discussed in the community, I'm often approached by people and saying, what is it that they're gonna do there? And your presentation has answered some of those questions, and the attachment to our agenda tonight goes into some details on the answers to those questions. But I think it's imperative that we, if we're to agree to move forward with a funding of whatever it is, the space or financial contribution of any kind, we need to be able to be advocates for that. So I think we need to, in my mind, as hopefully as part of the administrative package, coming back at a future council meeting, can have some of those, foundational pieces, which you have done here, but I think we need to be able to commonly talk about it, is where I'm going. So success, if I could say to the community, it means, well, if you meet this benchmark, and maybe that's, we're breaking some ground here, I think, in this, they might be success measures that we're not used to, but I think we still need to talk about them.
I agree, and I think we can put some of that into a better framework when we do the administrative package to you as to more about what success looks like. But it's everything from visibility to what Councillor Reid had talked about, where I'm just getting started in this. How do I learn more? What do I do next? A huge version of success for me was doing the Indigenous awareness training with the town and the Rotary a few years ago, and then walking away and going, my heritage is my great-grandfather homesteading here in 1902, and I was pretty proud of that as an Albertan. After the Indigenous awareness training, I kind of went, I've got a lot to learn. I'm going to put that on the back burner because I have to learn a lot of things, and it's on me to do that. It's not on anybody else. And so those are measures of success. If you're even causing one person to question and say, how did I get here? What's my heritage? How did I fit into this role? And where do I fit into the role today? None of us can change what happened, but every one of us can change what happens going forward. And having that awareness is a huge measure of success. So all of those things, the visibility, the ability for Indigenous people to identify and have a home in Cochrane, to see themselves reflected in their community. That's one of the things on awareness training that I've done, which is the first question they ask is, do you see yourself reflected in your community? Well, when I walk in the grocery store, I see the food I like. When I go to a clothing store, I see the clothes that I like to buy and wear because all of my other friends are wearing them. I see all of my life reflected in our community. Indigenous people don't see that. And we can change that, but we have to work on it. We're the ones who have the ability to do that. We're all sitting in positions of some authority, some we're sitting in positions of privilege, and we have the ability to do that. So we can definitely expand on that for you and bring that in the package, because it's a lot of things tied together of what success looks like.
Yeah, I didn't think it was an easy, it's this answer.
Yeah, no, $1 million a year profit net. Is that success? I don't know. Here's Trent.
Just to build on Kevin's statement to you. We were teaching a class at the university, and we were teaching the language. And one of the topics I introduced was the feast and verbs associated with the feast. And anyway, feasts are important in our culture. We hold what some people call the Feast of the Dead every autumn, where we feed the spirit of our ancestors. And during that class, when I introduced the topic and I said, we'll be holding a potluck, and I'd like each of you to introduce your own cultural background. Bring a food item that represents your culture. Many of the students said, we don't have a culture, we don't know our culture. So I told them, well, that's the challenge. Get to know your culture, your heritage, your ancestry. And when Feast Day came about, we had various people in different attire. People of Dutch background who brought their food, specifically cookies, that was important to that culture. We had people bring Persian rice. We had Latino people bring tacos. So just different dishes that represented the international nature of the students' cultural backgrounds. So success to me would be us being able to share that type of event with members of people from the town of Cochrane who are sharing parts of their culture with us, the Indigenous people, who will share our parts of our culture, be it Cree, Iethka, or Blackfoot. So that to me would be a type of success. Yes, thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I do have a couple more. One is, and I think I heard the answer to this earlier, but your plan is to become self-sufficient in the future, not to have to rely on town resources past a period of time.
Yes, indeed, it is the plan. And I mean, our goal would be 5 years to be independent of the town. Not independent, let's not say that, because we're going to be, this has got to be in part your project, I mean our project together. The town supporting something that is important for all of us to have. But what that actually turns into in terms of commitment from council, I don't know. But to get started,
yeah,
this is what we need, and then we'll just keep talking.
Okay.
And I do know that it's kind of like if you have a daycare center or a school or any something for social good, it's not a very good idea to tell a school, well, you have to financially support yourself in 5 years. I mean, there's a certain elements that our society ought to be supporting certain things that we collectively want as a society, you know, so there's that element of it. And that's why Rotary Club has stood up and said, we're going to stand behind this. We're going to stick with this and try to help it to be a success. And we do have a business model, and as the Great Trail comes on stream, we think that that's really going to be a big opportunity for tourist dollar development, and the center can plug into that as that's one big idea. And the other business idea is providing technical services to agencies in town. Perfect. Professional services, yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah, it does. And my last question is, have you thought of a plan B? Is there another space? Is there a...
You mean like Fort McLeod?
No, within Cochrane.
We're open to almost anything. Sure, but you know, like we thought the ranch, not the ranch house, that clubhouse, one part of that would be a great place. But it's not very central, but it's a great place. We could put up a teepee there quite a part of the year, and that would be, yeah, I mean, I'm sure we're very open to something. It's just got to be big enough so you can have 50, 60 people there in a meeting.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll get into those technical pieces in the administrative report, I'm sure. Okay, thank you. That's extended my questions. Councillor McFadden, you have another one?
Yeah, I did. I did want to highlight like what you handed us when the question was, you know, what does success look like? And I mean, this is a 7-point outline of what success looks like. And I just wanted to highlight some of the points that really resonated with me. Not only is success about having a gathering place for Indigenous people, but also that non-Indigenous people have a focal point. Like, I thought that was a real win as well, that it acts as I think you termed it as an Indigenous Embassy, and that it would offer that consultation, training, and support But then from the kind of the business lens of it, there's the goal to be financially sustainable, and also to be an attraction for tourists. So I do appreciate that you'd mapped out what success looks like. Following up on the mayor's line of questioning about the financial sustainability, and I just kind of I think challenge my colleagues about what lens we want to put on this. I don't think we're really looking at this as trying to invest in a business that's going to go off and do something. I think this is more about looking at a needed service in our community and more of a community partner than a business we're trying to invest in. And so I was just thinking of the different community partners we already work with on an annual basis as part of our budgets. And the ones that came to mind is like the Humane Society and Tourism, Boys and Girls Club, the Senior Center. All of these are partners, and I think maybe we need to be looking at this as a new service and a new partnership that we need to build into how we operate as a community. So I just wanted to put that lens out there to my colleagues as we're kind of thinking about this ask and how we can, advance and improve our relationships in our community. I know what's getting me excited about this process is what I'm really hearing, the true success from my lens is that everybody there, whether it was Indigenous or non-Indigenous, really wants to create a place of learning and friendships. And that's what really resonated with me, and I think this is a great step in making that happen. So I just want to share those points and those thoughts with you, and certainly thank you, gentlemen, and the Rotary advocates that are advancing this, and I look forward to the future discussions with our council on this. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you for raising those points. I don't see any other questions. Councillor McFadden did put the motion on the floor. Council, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. Thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Okay, next up on the agenda is bylaws, and we have 3, all related to taxes. Bylaw 06-2022, annual tax rate bylaw, and you do not look like Ms. Van Kyn-Pima, Mr. Derricott.
No, thank you for noting that distinct difference in appearance, Mr. Mayor. I will also say, if you recall, the last time we discussed tax rates, Catherine was here at this podium vehemently disagreeing with my position, and I just want to assure council that that's not why she's with us tonight. She's not like tied up in the basement or anything like that. She's just unavailable, and I'm pinch hitting for Catherine this evening. And I will also note that all the work that has been done here has been done by Catherine and her tax and assessment and finance team. So I will do my best to convey that and honor the work that they've done here. So as you have all become familiar, each year council must set the annual tax rates in order to collect property taxes. This is how we fund the town services. This also includes an educational component which is sent to the province, and support for the Rocky View Foundation, which contributes to seniors housing in our community. There's also a relatively new element, which is the province collecting for the assessment of industrial and linear properties. The due date for these is June 30th. Catherine talks a lot about pies, which always makes me salivate. I'm a big pie guy, so the pie is, in and of itself, this is a reference now to the types and amounts. This is the size of the proverbial pies that we collect for local services. You can see that the municipal taxes is just shy of $33 million, just over $16 million for the provincial education tax, just over $300,000 for the Rocky View Foundation, and $4,000 approximately to collect on behalf of designated industrial properties. I have 2 slides here, one indicating the split in collection between those various functions. This is residential, so for the average residential property, as they're paying, 60, just shy of 67% of that stays here locally in the municipality. 32.5% of that ends up in the provincial education program, and about 0.5% goes towards seniors housing. Non-residential, the split is not all that different, although there are some slight variations. 65.5% of non-residential taxes stay here locally, with the remainder, the vast majority of that, 34-ish% to education, and just under 0.5% to support the seniors housing programs. So that's the size of the pies themselves, and then now what determines the slices is the assessments. Is all Catherine's handiwork here. She's set us up here. And this is where we learned that not all slices are equal. I like to think I'm that big slice on the top left there, personally. Looks like a nice, tasty pumpkin pie. In the municipal context, there's a split between the residential and non-residential property. This has been discussed at times at length. That currently sits at 85% residential and 15 non-residential. This has been in place since 2018, and administration has recently committed to bringing forward a tax-related policy where we would have a fulsome discussion on what we feel the appropriate municipal tax split between residential and non-residential might be going forward. So not everyone gets a piece of each pie. There's a few quirks in the system. So only linear industrial properties pay the designated industrial property tax. That's a very small portion of the assessment in our community, largely made up of pipelines. So no other properties can contribute to that. Provincially owned properties do not pay either the education or Rocky View Foundation taxes, schools, the healthcare center, other facilities like that. There's also the CRL, Commercial Revitalization Levy, incremental, don't pay traditional municipal and education taxes, but they do pay the Senior Housing Foundation. We're going to talk a little bit more about this as there are some associated bylaws required for that program. Assessments. This is what is used to determine the tax rates now when we think about each property or each parcel. The higher the assessed value, the bigger the slice of pie or the amount of taxes that they would contribute. Municipal tax assessment increased by just under 10% in Cochrane over the last period. This is a combination of both parcel growth, as in new developments, as well as the inflationary market value changes. We operate under the mass appraisal method, which is common and is audited regularly by the provincial authority as well. This considers the market value as at July 1st of 2021, which is something that you'll often hear. I think the average homeowner needs a little bit of perspective on that because they'll be considering maybe what their house value is now compared to last July. And in particular, in a period of time like we've seen over the last 6 or 8 months, that can be significantly different than what they might have seen 6 or 8 months ago. The condition is assessed as of December 31st, 2021. So the average residential property assessment in 2021 was $455,000, basically $456,000, and that increased to just under $500,000, $496,000. As you can see here, that was quite an increase in the assessed value. The municipal tax levy increased about $225, approximately $18 a month on the average residential property. As with any time where you're talking about average properties, this actual property may not exist. This is just an aggregation of the numbers and is used to represent a general property that may exist in our community. This is a comparison of like jurisdictions or nearby jurisdictions. As I would say, Calgary is not like, but it is nearby. And also please just note that you'll see that some of the comparisons include 2021, as those communities, their 2022 tax rates were not available to us at the time of preparing this presentation. So the average residential assessment is listed, as well as the split of the total tax split, ours targeting 85-15, as you can see here, and then the relative differences that exist there in the communities, of which there is quite a wide variety. Now just moving to the same basic comparison with the non-residential properties. Again, note that a number of those tax rates, in fact most of them with the exception of Rocky View County, are their 2021 comparative rates. And as you can see here, while there was quite a wide variety in the residential, there's even a significantly wider range of approaches applied in the non-residential context. All of these have a lot of variables under which I think the conversation would be most appropriate as we bring forward a tax policy, and we can dive into some of the specifics that may be driving those pieces there. So the 2022 education taxes are preliminary. The province held the total taxes at the 2021 amount for this period. Each municipality share it has changed as their assessments changed. Any adjustments that may be required would be reflected in the 2023 rates. The total requisition of just over $16 million is about $500,000 more than it was in 2021. Rocky View Foundation, again, a requisition of just over $300,000 with a slight increase over 2021. Again, this all goes to supporting seniors housing in our community. So the total overall impact, where we try to aggregate both of the Rocky View and provincial amounts with the municipal tax levy, you can see that the end result is an approximately $235 increase over 2021 on the average assessed property. Something else to keep in mind is that we do still have some properties that are existent under an annexation agreement. When those properties came into the town of Cochrane jurisdiction, there's 23 properties remaining, and 2024 would be the last year of that agreement. There's approximately $160,000 less collected under this agreement than there would be should those properties be under the rates that the rest of the community was under as well. If the rates are set tonight, which we hope to see take place, we would be able to have the tax notices mailed by May 31st. And I'm available for questions on that first bylaw.
Thank you, Mr. Derricott. Appreciate Ms. Van Kuypima's presentation tonight.
As do I.
And council, we have first reading, second reading, unanimous consent, and third reading before us tonight, if you so desire. We'll look for first reading, obviously, first. Deputy Mayor?
I will move first reading for now and
Okay,
go from
yep,
there.
we can talk about it at second.
Yeah.
All those in favor of first reading? Carried. Thank you. You want to carry on to second reading?
I will move that.
Okay, do you have any comments, questions, or concerns?
Yeah, probably a couple. I mean, obviously I was not a person.
Oh, can you, yeah, thank you.
I was obviously not a person necessarily in favor of budget. I still don't know if I'm in favor of budget at this point. I will have to say that I understand residential concerns because to them, we've seen a lot of growth just assessment-wise, and then they get hit doubly as hard with the tax rate. So I do understand their concerns about having to dig deep. I also realize that Cochrane is not necessarily a place that should be or always looked at as, a really, always affordable place. Like that's not why people tend to plant roots here. Sometimes it's for bigger picture items. And so not to say that obviously financial concerns aren't important. I would like to reiterate though that my concern is that people's needs and services are being met. I always kind of look at it this way. I don't think anybody minds paying money as long as they feel that their money and dollars are going to things that they notice, that they see are beneficial to them as a resident, as a community member. And that to me is where that importance kicks in. And I certainly do not want to get on and hop on to feel like we're going to just constantly be improving high tax rates because we just feel it is the next step. I really want to see what those services are. I want to make sure that people are happy. I want to make sure that our town staff are happy. And all of that equates to getting my positive vote on this one. But it will hit people, and it's going to hurt because it's not just this cost. It's the cost of groceries, it's the cost of utilities, it's the cost of everything else that goes along with it. And I know as a couple of us that are single parents sitting up here, it's not easy. And so with those kind of things, I am glad to be able to answer those questions. I don't even have a necessary question, but just more of a comment that I do understand people's frustration with this.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Fedeko. Councillor Nagel.
Just to follow up on something I heard Councillor Fedeko say, and it was with regards to the assessments and the taxes doubling up. My understanding is that is not how it works, right? So a 9% valuation of the assessments and a 9% tax increase is not equal an 18% tax increase. He was give us more information on that.
Through the chair, happy to clarify that. Yes, Councillor Nagel, they do not compound. They are independent. At budget time, what we do is we pass what we require as a budgetary or an expenditure increase. And then at assessment time, what we do in the tax rate bylaw is we apply the appropriate mechanism to requisition that money from our residents. And if their assessed value has gone up, the mill rates will go down appropriately. And it doesn't change the amount of money that we collect. That amount is static to the budget that council passed.
Right, and I think that's an incredibly important point to drive home. Calling on my friends in the media to please make sure that they don't misreport that, because I think there is a number of people in Cochrane who pay attention to municipal politics who think that there's a 20% tax increase this year because the assessments and the budget have been reported separately. But yeah,
we consistently find that this is one of the more opaque parts of the local government process, and so certainly we welcome, as with Councillor Nagel, the support of our local media in clarifying that, and certainly try to communicate that as well as we send out the tax notices. We try to send out information that supports those conversations.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Nagel. I've had that same comment thrown my way, so thank you for clarifying that. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. Yeah, I had a similar thought to the one we were just talking about when we're talking about tax increases versus the residential split, and it was something that I was mulling over as we just finished doing our recent engagement on the weekend with the trade show and the town booth. I had some prepared remarks with this that I thought I don't think strays too far from the topic here, that I just wanted to make a comment on if I can. And that's that before I give my upcoming remarks, I'd just like to thank our communications and events staff for the booth that I just spoke about, Rebecca Friels and all the administration involved with the weekend trade show at the Spray Lake Sports Center. As usual, I thought we did excellent job of resident engagement, and it was executed professionally in first class. Thank you to you all. And however, I'm here with our Let's Talk Town budget survey, which I thought there's a reason why I'm bringing this up, because I think it lends to the discussion we're about to have, and that's that the resident engagement survey we gave to residents at the trade show booth I thought was emblematic of the binary framework we continue to utilize for our budgetary decisions. The survey that I have in front of me asked residents their opinion about a variety of topics, including roads, parks, communications, business developments, etc. The multiple choice answers offered by the survey were: would like to increase the service level, happy with the current service level, decrease service level, or don't use the service, they're unsure. I find this manner of engagement intellectually embarrassing and mildly irritating to residents, as it all too obviously only deals with 50% of the service delivery equation. And so what it fails to recognize is the efficiency aspect of municipal government services, that the other half of the equation that we should be asked, of course, is: are our tax dollars being spent comparatively efficiently, in a comparatively efficiently manner relative to comparable municipalities and organizations? And so I just wanted to take a moment during this discussion to say, To remind myself, council administration, that we should step up our efforts to show that the efficiency half of service delivery considerations instead of just talking about service delivery levels, especially when we're implementing increases to tax rates that are above the municipal price index, as we talked about during last budget. I feel it behooves us to demonstrate to the public how efficiently we are allocating our resources in comparison to comparing municipalities. I thought it was an appropriate time right now to communicate this opinion today as we vote on our annual tax rate bylaw. It's a subject that's been weighing on my mind since last fall's 2022 budget finalization. I look forward to us increasing our attention to this efficiency piece as we move forward. And all that off my mind, I see no value today in holding up second reading to bylaw 06/2022, and we'll vote in favor of all three readings tonight. And thanks for, I know it was a bit of a departure, and how much does that have to do with voting on the bylaw, but I thought if I was going to have a chance to say the efficiency piece, this would be the last time until our next budget discussion. So thanks for the patience there.
No, I thank you, Councillor Wilson. I think while it's out there, it's related.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor McFadden?
Are you just working to remember which name you're calling?
I was just seeing whose light was on next.
Excellent. Yeah, I wanted to thank my colleagues for the different lenses on this, and certainly Councillor Wilson on the efficiency piece. I think that's something we always need to focus on, every month of the year and not just budget months. How are we as a municipality doing things well? And as Councillor Fedeko said, it's all about the value for dollar. And my experience at the trade show, in interacting, with our residents for the first time in 2 years, where we were able to kind of freely do that again, it was great. The questions I was really hearing, and I didn't have one about the budget actually, was infrastructure related. It's like, how quickly is those roadwork projects coming on? How are they going to work? How can you make that happen faster? Need to expand other services, whether it be recreation or the seniors on the Bow facility needs an upgrade. So that was when hearing from our residents for the first time in a really authentic way for a few years. That's what I was really hearing, was that we're loving Cochrane and we're happy again, but here's the projects, and I know you're delivering on them, but I want them faster, and that's really what I was hearing. And I think that's necessary. I mean, a lot of what this council's focus on, both last term and this, has been about those transportation projects and expanding services and providing that service level that we all want. So that's what I was hearing, and I just wanted to share that. I do thank Councillor Nagel to making sure that we're going to get that conversation around the effects of the assessment and the taxes, that they're two different things, and way too often they get combined. And throw in your real estate appraisal, another A word that talks about the value. It's easy to get confused about how it works, and it's not a simple system. So certainly, friends in the media, if you have them, that's great. Yeah, like just to highlight that it is a complex thing, but at the end of the day, the tax rate is what we're going to set today, and it's not going to be nearly 20% as quickly some folks are thinking it might be. And I do appreciate the comparables. Question is, how are we delivering services compared to other municipalities? And it's really been my experience through the years that that's almost an impossible equation to deliver on, because every municipality is unique, right? So if you're saying, hey, how are we doing on our water? Well, you can't compare us to, or our sewer, you can't compare us to even Airdrie, because they're getting it directly from the city of Calgary, so you can't do that comparison. I'm thinking of even, in Canmore, like our cost to do garbage is different than Canmore's, because we have to ship it on an agreement to the city of Calgary. We're all champions of our parks and our recreation spaces, and we have a large number of trails and a large number of parks proportionally. But in having those, that means it costs more. So, and this is something I've struggled with over the years, because to be able to get that apples to apples is almost impossible. And so my lens always on this is to make sure that we're getting the best value in the taxpayer dollars. And so I appreciate the efficiency point. And yeah, it was, passing a 10% tax increase was not something I ever envisioned myself doing, necessary. And of course, my goal through this year of the implementation of that is making sure that not a dime of that isn't utilized to our best value. And that's really coming back to your point, the value for dollar. And as you highlighted, Councillor Fedeko, you know, I'm a single parent, you know, 2 kids, it's not a fun time financially, and you know, we all need the breaks where we can get them. But you know, the municipal costs have also gone up, and nowhere am I ever hearing anybody wants a cut of service. So it's a fine line we're walking right now, and it's a tough time, and it's a unique time. But I think the budget that we passed for this year is a necessary one. And so with all that connotation, all that thought process, I mean, the budget process is a complex one. And we've been talking about, not only do we, you know, want to be a great community, we want to be one of the greatest communities in the country, and that takes investment. And so that's why I really support what we're doing with this budget, because I think it's really focusing on that quality of life and celebrating that. So, anyway, thank you for the discussion, and of course, I'll be supporting the tax rate discussions tonight.
Thank you, Councillor McFadden. Councillor Flowers?
Thank you. I agree with much of what Councillor McFadden said, and she said it very well. I just want to shift to the topic of seniors for a minute. We have a $500 tax rebate for seniors that are low income, and I'm wondering if you've thought about raising that at all. Has administration had that discussion?
Thank you through the chair to Councillor Flowers. That's not a topic of conversation that has come up in my time with the municipality, but certainly are open to that conversation. And I think, again, it lends itself to our tax policy conversation in general as we discuss the broad context of how we want to apply taxation in our community, that likely that would be a place where that conversation could be explored in more detail.
Great, thank you. I find that there's many seniors living on very low income. I learned through FCSS and all the work I did there. It's shocking to know what some people live on. So this tax increase could hurt them more than anyone, and often they just want to stay in their homes as long as they can. So thank you. I would like to look at that at some point.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Flowers. Councillor Nagel?
Yeah, I just wanted to provide some further comment on the efficiency piece. I obviously completely agree with my colleagues that making sure our government is operating efficiently is a high priority for our taxpayers. And efficiency is something that can be very difficult to measure, but I think the best measurement is to look among comparables. And at this point, it's very important to bring up that the CFIB, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, which is an independent, nonpartisan, very credible research and advocacy organization in Canada, has published that in Alberta, Cochrane has the lowest per capita operating expenses among comparable municipalities. They've got 17 mid-sized cities, as well as Calgary and Edmonton, that they look at every single year, and year over year, or year after year, Cochrane has come up as, on a per capita basis, we are spending less than all the others, which to me says we are efficient. And something that has contributed to my thinking and my thought process in this current budget is when I actually took that stat out to the public during the last municipal election and talked about it, I expected to receive overwhelmingly positive feedback from the residents. And what I actually found at the doors and on social media and with a variety of people, when I brought that up, they looked at the numbers and saw that we were like hundreds of dollars per capita below the next lowest person. They were like, whoa, you know, Morgan, I don't actually want you to underfund the municipality, was the feedback that I received. And then when we talked to our administration about the budget during the fall, it came up again that, yeah, we're underfunded here in Cochrane. And so I don't have any intention of being the kind of elected official who's going to continually want to raise taxes over and over. But for me, this is a budget that was an opportunity for us to increase the resources, to give our staff the resources and tools that they need to actually deliver. And Cochrane is still very efficient, and we're still on a per capita basis. I'm looking forward to seeing the next report, because we're probably still the lowest per capita operating. If not the lowest, probably second or third lowest. But yeah, I'll get off my soapbox. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Nagel, for highlighting that. I think it's well put, and I'm not going to repeat everything you said, but between your statements and Councillor McFadden's statements, I couldn't agree more. And I was going to go on about comparables as well, but there's one thing about comparing. It's a new word. You guys will put it in the thesaurus later. Comparing one another to one another, and I had the opportunity to host a mayor from another community in Alberta, and I'm going to not name that person because every time I've done that, it punches me in the face the next day. And while touring that person around, They constantly were saying what a beautiful community we had. I'm like, yeah, I know that. How clean it is, I know that. And how difficult and expensive it must be to service. From another person in the same chairs that we're in, that sees things through the same lenses that we do and has to do the same function we do on a yearly basis. For that person to recognize how expensive it must be to get water up to out of the elevations of obviously where the river is in the bottom, and pump things back and forth. And so it's very difficult to compare and do that apples to apples comparison. But for me, it was very enlightening having it, and it's something obviously we know, but for someone else to come and highlight that you know, wow, for the same size of community in Alberta, it must cost us next to nothing to do what you're doing. So, and then on top of that, to be on that list as one of the lowest or the lowest, you're right, it is underfunded. So that said, I think we're on the right track. It's not something we want to do, but something we feel like we have to do. And yeah, again, I'm not going to repeat everything that's been said, but I'm in support of the tax rate that we're having put forward tonight. I don't see any other lights on. Deputy Mayor Fedeko, you put the motion on the floor for second reading. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please indicate. That is passed, and we need a motion for unanimous consent to go to third reading. Councillor McFadden.
I'll move that council give unanimous consent to go to third reading of Bylaw 06, 2022.
Thank you. Call the question. All those in favor? That passes unanimously, so we have consent. And third and final reading. Carry on, Councillor McFadden.
I'll move that council give third reading.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that carries. Thank you, Mr. Derricott. Stand in Ms. Van Kynpema, and I believe you're with us for a couple of more tax rate.
I am, thank
Bylaws?
you very much, and I just would just add that administration is obviously appreciative of the dialogue that's taking place at the council table and the perspective that it brings to the work that we do. So thank you for that conversation.
5B.
Thank you. Before us now is Bylaw 07, 2022, our annual CRL tax rate bylaw. Boy, I don't know how Catherine continuously makes these bylaws seem exciting. I mean, we don't have quite the charisma there, but the community revitalization levy, applies to 57 acres in our downtown area. It's designed to spur redevelopment of underutilized area. They set a baseline of property assessment as per a date. In this case, it's December 31st, 2012. From that date, as the assessment of the properties improve in value, that portion funds the community revitalization projects that come along with it. So it's estimated that over the 20-year period of the bylaw here in Cochrane, that there will be somewhere between just under $14 million to $18 million collected, and that the town would receive approximately 5 to 6 million that would have ordinarily gone to the province. This is then redirected into projects that must be done inside of the designated area to improve, to revitalize and improve there, and they cannot be used for general municipal operations. We are required to set this rate annually. The CRL rate is applied to the CRL incremental assessment, which is the change in assessed value from that December 2012 date. This year, we are expecting to collect $1.5 million approximately. I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Derricott. This is something we should all be familiar with. Councillor Reid.
Yeah, I'd like to move first reading of Bylaw 07, 2022, authorize the rates for taxation to be levied against assessable property with the Cochrane Community Revitalization Area for the year 2022.
Okay, that's first reading. All those in favor of first reading? Carries. Would you like to
I'll
Carry
move
over.
second reading for the same
Yep.
bylaw.
Yep, go ahead.
And so I will move the second reading for the bylaw and indicate that I think this is a really critical thing for our community. And as I understand it correctly, we were one of the very first communities to jump on this. And I think it's really paid for itself in terms of the services and infrastructure that we have available to us.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Reid. Councillor McFadden, you have a question? Comment?
Yeah, both. I was just thinking the other day, trying to evaluate kind of all the innovations that happen in Cochrane, and it was kind of becoming a, what have you done for me lately type question on innovation. But then to like come back to this one, because I remember when this came ahead, and to see, how much revenue we generate off of this. And I think you're right, Cochrane is like one of 3 or one of only 4 municipalities that actually engaged this. And that was just fortunate, to having the right staff asking the right questions and being able to challenge things and take a few risks. So it's been a huge win for Cochrane. My question though is in regards to, so the funds used have to go to improvement projects within the region, within the designated area. Can we change or amend those projects? Like I know when we started it that we had to kind of identify a list of what we were going to do, but can we add to that list or tweak that list?
Yes, thank you through the chair to Councillor McFadden. I believe that we can. There is a process associated with that, and there are associated limitations to what applies, but there is some flexibility in terms of the projects, and if they fall under the broader scope of the CRL program, that they can likely see an amendment, although it is a process.
And so some of this funding went towards the transit hub back in the day. That's one of the projects in the crossing, which we're looking forward to happening this year. And but can that also if we're looking for projects to amend, can that be like more on just pure parking solutions?
Yes, thank you, Councillor McFadden. Parking is identified as one of the core projects under the CRL. I believe around $3 million is identified as going towards improving parking in the designated area.
Okay. All right, thank you for that clarity, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McFadden. See any other questions? All those in favor of second reading? Carries, and we need to carry on. Thank you, Councillor Reid.
We're doing third reading then?
Unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent. Also move that then in relation to this bylaw 07/2022.
All right, all those in favor of giving unanimous consent tonight? That carries, and third and final reading.
I'll move third and final.
All those in favor, please indicate. Trying to come up with different language so it doesn't sound so repetitive. It's stupid, I won't do it again. That carries. Thank you. 5C.
I think everyone would have appreciated it, Mayor. You could have just let that one go there, but you outed yourself a little bit.
It's almost 7:30.
Bylaw 08/2022, CRL Supplementary Tax Bylaw. This is a quite technical accompaniment to our annual taxation process. This applies the CRL rate to any supplementary assessments, and the bylaw is needed to set this rate. Oh. Got a little excited with the roller on the mouse there. My apologies. I don't have anything else to say about that, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Oh, we're gonna have a lot now.
These, I will fully admit, will be where you're least likely to get full value with me at the podium here, but I will certainly do my best.
Okay, council, we're looking for first reading for this one now. Councillor Nagel, thank you.
I will move first reading of bylaw 08/2022.
All those in favor? Carried.
I will move second reading of bylaw 08/2022.
Any questions, concerns? No, don't see any lights. All those in favor of giving second reading? And you see the list in front of you?
I move unanimous consent.
All those in favor of unanimous consent? Thank you. And third and final reading.
I move third reading of bylaw 08/2022.
Thank you. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you, Mr. Derek.
Yeah, thank you, council, for supporting this. Will allow us to get the tax notices out in a timely manner, and also especially thank you for not asking me any questions on supplementary assessment. Mr. Hyman and I, before the meeting, were both trying to be like, what exactly is this? How do we describe this? And I must admit, we didn't come up with a great answer, so thank you so much for your time.
Okay, council, I think this is a good time to take a 7-minute break. I'm doubling what you give us, Deputy Mayor, so 5 hours.
Mayor's mic's not on.
It is. I'm not saying it again. I don't need this. Okay. We are back live. Call the meeting back to order. We are on 6A. Ms. Knight is with us to go over the agenda item called Data Relocation Funding Request. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Earlier this year, it was identified that some of our data is not within Canadian soil, as noted in your report. We're before you this evening to request funding from IS Technology Reserve to correct that issue. All of the information is in the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Councillor Nagel.
As a matter of procedure, I should put the motion on the floor.
His
Please.
mics.
So I move that council approves the capital project of $74,000 for data relocation to be funded from the IS Technology Reserve. Obviously, I will support whatever fund is necessary to keep the lights on, do the basics. But I was wondering if you could please provide a bit more information on why it costs $74,000. Like, are we paying out contracts that were previously existing, or we're just paying some computer program $35,000 a month for 2 months? What's going on?
Just before you answer, could we just get your microphone on? I think it clicked off by accident. There we go. There we go.
Through the chair to Councillor Nagel, we are needing to bring in a contractor who specializes in this type of work. We don't have in-house capacity to do this, nor the expertise. And so the contractor will be hired to do this specific work and nothing further, and then move on to their other clients. To move this data is a significant amount of transitioning to ensure there's no interruption to access to this information during that time.
Look, can I ask more follow-up questions? Like,
For sure.
What program are we, like, where's the data stored currently? Is it in AWS servers or?
It's cloud-based from what I understand. Mr. Showalter, who unfortunately was not able to be here tonight, our manager of IS, would probably have more of the technical expertise, but because the data server is in the US, it is tied to the privacy laws of that country. It's certainly a piece of the data that we have within the town. The rest is housed within servers that are located here, some on site, some on redundant sites, to ensure that that data is sitting on Canadian soil. We do have additional programs that run and have those data sites on Canadian soil. That has been a significant focus for the municipality, as that is a requirement. And when this was identified by Mr. Showalter and his team, I needed to bring this now because we don't want to wait till 2023.
Okay. And we'll see what else everybody else has to say.
I don't think anyone else has anything to say. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, like if I'm picking up what you're putting down, you're in the industry, so I think you're finding the $74,000 to be an extremely high number from your lens.
Well, maybe. I don't know what program. I don't even like. I don't know what this is. Like, are these Microsoft Dynamics constituents or like?
It's a cloud-based Microsoft product. We need to get it off of Canadian soil or off of American soil. So the IS team did go out for multiple quotes to try to find the best provider that could get us the project done in the time frame we are requiring, with also the best cost to the municipality. And this was the cheapest price that Mr. Showalter came across, but we did get multiple quotes to get to this.
Okay.
Councillor McFadden, does that satisfy your?
Yeah, I was assuming that's where we were going, and of course, just from a security perspective, yeah, for sure, everything needs to be here in Canada, and make sure that we're following as many IS security parameters and protocols as we need to. It's a necessary part of doing business. So this has my support. Thank you.
I think further to that, it's about our data being under the laws of our own country, less than it is about security, but it's all of that, right?
Correct.
Deputy Mayor Padeco? The deputy mayor thing throws me every time.
And I guess maybe that's my question, is that what is the difference? Because maybe we'll be asked as to if it is on, US soil, what is the difference between that and Canadian when it comes to the privacy aspect?
The privacy laws in the US, from my understanding, and because I'm on the periphery of this project, is that they can access our data without our permission. And so where they can get access to those things, in Canada, those laws are much stricter. And so the reason we want to have all of our data on Canadian soil ensures that the privacy laws of our country are actually mandated and controlled over our data.
Perfect, and obviously that's where the security aspect comes in, so that in case those things are ever breached in some way.
Correct.
If I may also add to that, it's an alignment of protocol pieces as well. If we design our protocol pieces in alignment with Canadian privacy law, we just have to ensure also that the data is kept within those pieces. And so there's a number of elements that I think expose us to just unnecessary risk. And so we're working to eliminate those.
Perfect, and I imagine that some of these might have existed years ago when maybe this wasn't necessarily such a, I don't want to say a heightened issue within just society in general, but I imagine that was probably the case, that these might have been existing for years and we just are finding out about it now.
Through the chair to Councillor Ferdega, we are actually generally very intentional in where our data is housed. And with Mr. Schwalter's review of this information, we're not actually sure the exact time frame of when this was moved, most likely by the vendor that is in control of the data.
Perfect, thank you.
Councillor Reid?
Having watched The Inside Man, I know that this is a I know this is a critical issue, so I'm happy to support it.
Thank you for those comments. Okay, I don't see any other lights on. I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion on the floor? Carries. Thank you, Ms. Knight.
Thank you.
Next up, 6B. Mr. Corman, you're here before us to talk about the Route 22 Artist Collective funding request, and this was generated from our last Committee of the Whole meeting.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you for having me tonight on council. Route 22 did have a delegation come on May 2nd, and they are asking for a funding request to support their 2022 operating budget. They are a nonprofit organization, and this funding would ensure that they have the ability to sustain their operations through to 2023, when their formal non-for-profit status will be achieved, providing them access to alternative funding sources not currently available. Administration acknowledges that this funding request is outside of existing policy. The new community services team will be working with towards developing programs and processes to support sustainable community endeavors in the art and cultures. However, in the absence of any established framework to support Cochrane's arts and culture community, administration is generally supportive of this one-time funding, given the role that Route 22 currently is fulfilling in the arts community in absence of other endeavors. So our ask tonight is that Council approve a one-time funding of $50,000 to Route 22 Artist Collective to assist operationally for the remainder of 2022. This funding will come from operational reserves, general operating reserves, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Corman. Thank you for the presentation tonight. Councillor Reid, you're up first.
Yeah, I'm going to actually move option 2, that is that we don't support the funding for this request. To be clear, it's not that I don't support the artist community. I just think there's a much bigger community out there in terms of the arts culture that we're not recognizing, and would think that we might be better placed to wait till the information from administration comes forward and recognizing that in some form of an arts council, then it gives all groups in the arts culture an opportunity to be able to come forward and look for funding. The other thing is, having had the opportunity of being able to do some research as I spoke to the last meeting, having surveyed not all, actually all but one of the mid-sized cities, I was surprised to find, other than Okotoks and Canmore, there was, and Okotoks, to be clear, is actually a combination of a visitor center and art gallery, not just purely an art center, or a center for artists. I think we need a little more time on this, to be honest, and so I'm not supporting it, and I'm motioning option 2.
So to be clear, your motion states to not fund. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Flowers?
I would disagree with Councillor Reid in the fact that this is unique, it's innovative, it's one-time funding. It's a kickstart to a program that could really take off. And when I look at the history of some of our social ventures here in the community, like say the campground, has put thousands of dollars back into the community. And the town gave them a $600,000 kickstart when they got going. And Cochrane Home Treasures is putting thousands back into the community, and they started off with some support through FCSS. Before and after school care program at the Boys and Girls Club is sustainable and it supports itself. So I see this could have a really positive future with a kickstart. I wouldn't want to see us keep funding it, but it is filling a void right now that we have where we really need to look at that. But I'd like to see it get a start and just have a little support to keep going. My one question is, I thought they were already a nonprofit society, but they don't have their status yet?
Through the chair to Councillor Flowers, they're looking for a charitable status.
Oh.
Where they can then provide a receipt for donations. And so they're in the process of having that status be approved through the federal government.
So they do have their nonprofit status through Alberta?
Through the chair, that's correct. They are a nonprofit. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flowers. Deputy Mayor Fedeko.
Yeah, I do have to agree. I kind of struggle with this one, and not because I don't support the arts. I think that we have been almost negligent when it comes to supporting our arts community. I struggle that this is a group of 40+ artists, and I know that Cochrane area has some amazing artists, everything from visual artists to performing arts to musicians to everything, and I just struggle that we're only supporting 40+ people under this, and where is the rest of the arts community? I haven't even heard from anybody else other than this group who has come forward to ask us to fund particularly them, but I haven't heard of any other arts group coming forward to say, you know, could this be a collaborative venture, or could it include us, or, you know, I worry that we are setting a precedent by supporting one, and all of a sudden now we're going to have another group that comes forward and says, hey, but you gave money to these guys, why are you not funding us? And I do have to agree that it's not that I'm not willing to fund them, but there's a piece of information that I don't feel I have all that information yet. And so, you know, to Councillor Reid's point, to say that, you know, we're not going to fund it, maybe a friendly amendment to say that I would like to see it brought back with some additional actual information, and maybe information when it comes to other arts groups. Are they all in support of this? Because I really have a hard time funding people that are just part of this group, and we haven't heard from any others. And I think it just came on so suddenly that I'm struggling with it a bit.
Councillor Nagel.
Yeah, unfortunately, I would support not funding it as well, given the financial pressures, which we just discussed in our recent tax votes. I think I'm really trying to hold my personal spending voting decisions to a very high standard. It's like, this is an absolute must happen. We have to do this. And this just doesn't quite meet that criteria to me. This is essentially, I felt it was an art gallery with like a handful of events. It wasn't like weekly events, it was just a few events. And to fund that for $50,000 just didn't really quite seem right to me at this point. Yep.
Councillor McFadden.
I'm super curious about that. Hilarious. Yeah, I would actually agree with giving them funding. And I certainly agree with Councillor Fedeko's point. I think in the world of arts and culture in Cochrane, we've been, you know, almost negligent. It's not an area that we focused on at all. I think it is a need. Like, that's an important part of our society, and we need to find a way to support it. As Councillor Reid had said, you know, we haven't really heard from other groups, and, you know, my experience, there's always been an ebb and flow. There's been, you know, arts and culture groups that have gotten together and championed the need and been present, and then, you know, that group is kind of, you know, faded away. And so that's actually, you know, why I would want to support this, because I really see this as a seed to build from. If this group can't, you know, if we can't help them bridge this gap, they may fold, and all the momentum that they're actually bringing to the table is going to disappear, and we'll see that ebb again. And so, you know, I do see it as a valuable investment. in our community. And you to your lens, I see this as a starting point for how we can expand on broader arts and culture. And honestly, if other groups show up and say, hey, we are also an active group trying to make a difference in the arts and culture. If this inspires more demand, if this inspires the creation of a broader group, I think that would be a great thing. And then, from my lens, we would be, wanting to get everybody together so that it's not siloed. But I think this is an important initiative to keep alive. I think it can be a seed to the broader solution, because if this folds, we may be back to zero again. So that's where I'm coming from on this.
Mayor, if I may just add a comment there. I think I just want to point out as well that independent of council's decision to fund this particular request, it is administration's intention to develop a broader framework under which arts and culture in our community would see support and more visibility to the various groups in our community as to what that would look like. And again, just to be clear, that's independent of this particular decision.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. My deferral there wasn't some nefarious positioning tactic. It was because I wanted to hear what you had to say, Councillor McFadden. I came into this with no set opinion. I wanted to hear what the table had to say to make up my mind, and 5 really good comments. For now, I'm on option 2, that I don't think we should go ahead with the one-time funding, but I'm eager to hear more what comes out of the framework that'll come back to us, and what discussion might take place next budget time. I might have a different opinion, but for today, unless the mayor has something game-shaping for me, I'm option 2 on this one.
Okay, well, I'm glad that your ears are still open. Maybe I'll weigh in now, and then we'll get back into the queue. I disagree with option 2. I actually agree with the funding as the recommended action states for a few reasons, and some of them have already been brought up this evening. And that is, I think this group knows, and I think I mentioned it when in our committee of the whole, I was just looking back at my notes here, that we have been remiss in funding arts, and I completely agree with your statement. It's been nowhere. So in my view, this group has found an innovative approach to showcase art in our community, taken it upon themselves to take out a lease, collect a group of artists, and promote art in our community. They stated loud and clear that this is it's an olive branch, it's a bridge to get through a hard time. Let's not forget, we're just coming out of COVID. This group was able to keep the doors open throughout COVID and continue to support artists in a time in our lives when we all need that little warmth and, well, I'm not going to get into the needs of and depths of what art is for each of us, but it is important. And we each, in our platform, state how we are supportive of the culture of Cochrane, and we want to preserve the history and what it is to be from Cochrane, and we're promoting and constantly leveraging that. But I think we need to put our money where our mouth is and actually support a group that has their hand out. I would also argue that this is not, while it might be sudden to us at the council table, in their report, they were in front of our administration in November trying to be a part of our budget deliberations, and for the reasons around the CRA ask and the partnerships and all of the questioning that they were going down really delayed them getting on a council agenda. So I heard it pretty loud and clear that if there wasn't a funding solution found, that this group is going to be scrambling and looking for, potentially shutting down. And I would think that I agree with Councillor McFadden that this is something that has risen up out of the ashes, if you will, of what has been a decimated arts and culture community in Cochrane, because for many reasons, I guess, over the years, we've had advisory committees, etc. But if we were going to wait and set that, that's a long process. This group will have long be gone by then, and we'll be back, I'm sure, looking for somebody to step forward and take up the reins where this group already has them. So, I mean, I'm more of and I talked about this during our committee of the whole, that I'd like to see a transition down, but we're not even proposing multi-year of budget implications at this point. We're asking for one-time ask. So the one thing that I appreciated about the Route 22 in their presentation was that they would act as an interim kind of solution for us to go to as a place to ask questions about art, facilities, etc. In the meantime, while our administration works to put a framework in place for us to have an organization that can facilitate some of this. But that's my long way of saying I think it's some money, I guess, but it's a lot of money to this group to further something that I think that we need to embrace rather than look for more answers from, because the longer we take, the less opportunity and the less likely they are to be successful. So I think we should defeat the motion and go back to the recommended action is how I'm kind of putting myself out there, unless others have something to change my mind, Councillor Wilson. Deputy Mayor Federico.
Thanks. There's been a lot of good comments and some that have, certainly helped kind of maybe clear things up. And I'm certainly still, don't know which side of the fence I'm kind of sitting on. When it comes to the timeline or the framework, what are we kind of considering? I know that the mayor kind of alluded to that this might not be an easy short-term process, but just kind of wondering what that might look like.
Yeah, thank you. That's quite a large process and a big picture question. I certainly don't think we would anticipate having a framework in place that would answer this specific question for Route 22 in this operational year, only that we would begin building programs and policies that would support art in general. I don't know, Ms. Lowe, if you have anything to add to that.
I would augment what CEO Derricott has said. We are currently working on the public art policy because we know that's another one that the community is very interested in and what goes along with that. Council should see that in the next couple of months. But to build a framework on what support for the arts and culture community will look like, that's a bigger process and framework, and some of that you will see in the 2023 budget coming forward and how we can look to support that going into the next years. But at this point, we've had community services and a director in place for just barely 3 months. And so it is definitely on our minds and at the forefront for all the reasons that council's already said. We know that this is an area that requires municipal support and facilitation, and we're looking for the appropriate way to do that.
Yeah, thanks. And I think the mayor did nail it, because my other question was, what happens to if we don't support it? And I struggle with it because of the group dynamic, but I also don't want to be the one person up here who says, what, I just said that we've been negligent and all of a sudden we're just not willing to step up and support something. I guess I would really like to reiterate that this would be a one-time option for them. I don't plan to fund this group continually on, especially not if they have not collaborated with other artists. I have a real problem with that, because that's where the arts group has always gone wrong in our community, is that we get people who infight and all of a sudden groups break apart and all of a sudden there's nobody coming together at the table. They just can't seem to get along. And so in that regard, I would probably go to support it, but it would be a one-time thing. And I hope that that message is that they start to approach every other art group out there, visual, music, performers, all of them, bring them together so that we have a thriving arts community and not just one based on 40 plus artists.
If I may, through the chair to Deputy Mayor, in our conversations with them through the year, they have expressed interest and action to go out to other community groups to try to consolidate the arts community. I believe they did say that in their presentation to council as the delegation. So they are actively trying to bring the community together as well. But it is, first go around, first phase.
Yeah, perfect. And I totally agree that we haven't done our part in supporting arts, and I don't want to be that one person to say that I don't support the arts. So arts is important to our culture and it's important to our community, and I'll get behind it, at least for this round anyways.
Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, I really appreciate a lot of the points, and certainly points that you made, Mr. Mayor, although to disagree with you on one point. I don't see this as a handout as much as I see it as a hand up. And this group has been innovative and survived for a number of years without coming to us, asking for help. And they were trying to find innovative ways to be a partner before we got to this point. And we've identified for years that arts and culture is important to us. It's a key element of the tri-site. But as we know, the full build out of the tri-site is going to be many years out. And we've learned tonight that a lot of the arts and culture work and the framework, you know, that's a multi-year process. So a short-term win is to keep this group energized and empowered to be our voice for arts and culture. And certainly the challenge always is silos. And if we can encourage them to build up, you know, partnerships, that's what would actually build, because I have the same sort of concerns that you do. I'd like to see a full-on business plan that would put me in a comfort zone, but to certainly encourage them to come up with, you know, partnerships. And that would certainly build my comfort level for a longer support. But I can certainly see this as an interim solution for our arts and culture gap, and to invigorate them and make them part of our solution. So that's why it has my support. Generally speaking, you know, 50,000, no business plan, kind of, it does feel cold. Would be a hard thing to say yes to, but understanding this is a unique circumstance, it does have my support.
Councillor Reid?
Yeah, again, it's not that I don't support the artist community. I support the arts community, to be clear. And with no business plan, no measures of success, $50,000 is a lot of money, I think, for a group that has no business plan, no measures of success. And if this is defeated and then subsequently passed, I would encourage all other arts groups to approach council in the next couple of months and ask for $50,000 so that we can support the arts community.
Councillor Flowers?
I just wanted to remind everyone that we have Cochrane Integrated Arts Society here in the community. And although they don't have a home or a physical location, they've been very active in providing programs and services during culture days and whatnot downtown, and all kinds of learning opportunities. So for a small group, they've been active, and they wanted to pull in other groups. So I don't think it's a duplication, it's two different things altogether, but I just wanted to give them some credit.
Councillor Nagel?
Would there be any interest in doing a $50,000 RFP process? Just putting this out to the community for a few months and see if these groups can manage to come together and present something to us for a $50,000 grant? Open it up to everybody, not just the first group that got in front of us?
It looks like it's generated some interest from...
I see that.
Councillor Flowers?
I believe through the tri-site work that we did, we pulled the groups together, and we ended up with the Cochrane Integrated Arts Society, and they were the main group that was doing this type of work. So they might be the ones to put a proposal in, but they were really waiting for the tri-site to be developed and getting on with that before moving forward. Anyways, I don't think it's a good idea.
Councillor McFadden?
No, it's an intriguing idea. I like the approach. I would actually more approve of that kind of for like a second-year challenge. Let's let the group kind of get through the year, but it would be interesting to kind of build out like an RFP process like that, similar to how we do with other. I think we'd had conversations around events that maybe we kind of challenge groups to step up with a solution. So I like the way you're thinking. I'm just thinking that's kind of the timeline for this is just too short, but I'd certainly be open to seeing if we kind of investigate that approach to other options in the future. So no, it intrigues me, but not, what did you say? Not a good idea today? All right, thanks so much.
Through the chair, just for point of clarity, the Route 22, they do have a business plan. They have an operational plan. They haven't shared it with council, but I would assume that if provided funding, they would be happy to come back and share their successes about that business plan and what they've achieved through the year.
Yeah, and from what I heard from that presentation, they have generated revenue up to $90,000 a year. They had a business plan, and they were looking for and I liked your language, hand up. That's, thank you for that. And that's how I see this. But I do like your idea, Councillor Nagel, that in the future, and I see this as a short-term gap to help out a group that's providing a service already in our community, to get them through a rough patch, likely due to COVID. And then in the future, if we were to do, and that might be part of the framework that administration brings back to us, is that there's an RFP program, so that it is equitable. And I hear what you're saying, Councillor Reid, about one over another, but this is the group that's in front of us now. So I kind of see the merits of what everybody's bringing to the table. But again, I think the short timeline that this group has, and I would hate to see them falter and fail. I'm not going to repeat everything I said, but that's my answer to your question that you posed. So don't see any other lights on. The motion is option 2, correct, Councillor Reid, to not fund the Route 22 Artists Collective. So I will call that question. All those in favor of not funding the group? Those opposed? That fails. Is there someone willing to put a second motion? Councillor McFadden?
I'll move option 1, that council approve one-time funding of $50,000 to Route 22 Artists Collective to assist operationally for the end of 2022, funding to come from operational reserves.
Okay, any comments further? I think we've covered it, but you're certainly welcome to.
I get shared all my brilliance.
Okay, don't see any of the lights. All those in favor of that motion? Those opposed? And that carries.
Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Corman. Moving on, no finance. Notices of motion, we have one. Deputy Mayor Fedeko.
All right, so we all know that I think one of our favorite sayings in the background of council has been trees bring joy, and I wanted to give a shout out to Mr. Belsey's grade 6 class at Ranch View School. His students did a pretty incredible job, and I think some of the things that they want are part of this whole new delegation process of where they want to ask for a couple things, and sometimes we can't do anything at the committee of the whole, so I wanted to bring it forward so that their idea was not lost in translation and over time. So I am asking that council support me in my direction to administration to designate areas where trees can be planted and provide that information to Rocky View Schools to coordinate tree planting events for students, and further that council declare the white spruce as the official tree of Cochrane, which is of course the grandfather tree. Rather than, trees just being looked at to be planted on school sites, which I think is what they kind of had originally asked for, it might be difficult in some ways to coordinate that. So I'm hoping that we could push a little bit on this so that the students might have that possibility of planting some trees this June, which is what their whole point of coming before council was. So again, great job, students, great job, Mr. Belsey, yeah, I hope that everybody supports it because trees bring joy, of course.
Mr. Chair, if I may, just before you pass this on to council for conversation, might I suggest or request even Deputy Mayor Fedeko that this be considered as a request for administration to bring back a report based on this? There are significant operational considerations that I think council would want to be aware of in terms of potential costs, et cetera, with doing this. I don't want to be the guy who's not saying that trees bring joy, because administration certainly believes and supports the intent of the work that was done by Mr. Belsky's grade 6 class, but I do think that there are some pieces there that would need to be considered before making a commitment that may be multi-year and have operational implications. I would at least want council to be aware of that before they made a final determination.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
Fair enough. Do we know how quickly that could come back? Just because I don't want to lose the momentum, and I don't want them to think that, now it's taken us 6 months to come back with an administrative report, that then it's, it's outside that window. So I understand what you're saying, but I would like to see this sooner than later.
Yeah, thank you. I don't say this at all to be flippant, but I do think it's important that they learn and understand the full process of how the government functions. We want to do their request justice. We want to give it appropriate information, and we want to build a program that I think would be sustainable into the future, which I believe would truly honor the work that they did here, rather than just quickly designating an area and say, sure, plant some trees in this square here, but we're not prepared to support them with watering, et cetera. I feel like, although it may take a little bit longer, that would be, like I said, a better way to honor the work and the requests that they have done there. And we would certainly be happy to reach out on an interim ad hoc basis to see if there's an arrangement that can be made in the short term to support an activity of that nature, while we're also building a larger kind of program in the background.
Yeah, I think that would be great if we, you know, at least reach out, and maybe it's like a really small project this year while we look at what that larger aspect could be, because I certainly agree there are definitely, you know, challenges and implications that go forward in the future, and maybe also that they start to work, you know, with SEAC or some of our other groups. Branches and Banks is obviously occurring this weekend, so I think there's some opportunity there. I just don't want it to be told that it's a no. So if we could do something on a small scale, I think that would probably be even exciting for the students to have.
Absolutely. I think we can deal with that directly, and certainly Ms. Lowe's taken some notes here, and we'll take that back to her team. I would also add that there's the other elements of it, which include a declaration of Arbor Day, as well as a declaration of the white spruce, in particular the grandfather tree. Those can probably come back relatively soon, as there's not necessarily the same kind of implications associated with those. So it may be kind of a two-part process as well.
Perfect. Thank you for all the clarification.
Councillor Wilson?
Thank you. Excellent notice of motion, thank you, and great points by our CAO, I felt. I just had a question for clarity, and thank you to the Ranch View School grade 6 class. I wasn't here for that, but I watched online attentively. To Councillor Fedeko, just as a point of clarity, would this address theoretically some of the trees that have been felled due to our provincial highway project that we were all sad to see go? I don't know if any white spruces were felled in particular, but is this a general Cochrane-wide tree planting sort of initiative, or are they more specific to school sites? And I wasn't really clear on the scope of the project.
I think that's where Mr. Derricott brought some great points forward, that maybe this year it just becomes something small. But overall, I think it's a broader picture, but I think there's also a lot of different things that they can look at, partnering with different groups, or I think even, if I'm not mistaken, I think one of the financial institutions here also has a tree planting thing, right? So there could be some ways that maybe we could tie them all together for the students, and then it becomes not just about tree planting, but also a learning experience for partnering and creating those different things, but just so that it doesn't get lost, because I find some of these things just get lost. People come forward, they present, and we don't ever really seem to take them anywhere, and then they just die off, right? So I don't want to lose that, but I do agree with the points that were brought forward from our CAO.
You're good, Councillor Wilson?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, however we amend the direction, it has my general support that we move ahead with this, and I mean, trees being joy has become a rallying cry that I think we as council enjoy too much. But yeah, so however we land this, and I appreciate the practical applications, and these are good questions. It's not only do we want to plant the tree, but we also need to water the tree and keep it alive. Otherwise, it's an exercise in futility. So, so I think that's great. So if we have land, it's got my support. I really would like to see an opportunity, though, for the kids to be able to like plant trees this school year would be great. And I guess the key learning always is that government moves slower than you were hoping. But
thank you. If I may, just to again support the idea of engaging this class in an activity this spring, we do have annual exercises where we do plant trees, and so perhaps it will just be as easy as connecting them with a tree planting process that is already in place. But I will leave that to our parks group to connect with Ms. Lowe, who will translate that back to the grade 6 class, and certainly feel strongly about the idea of having a robust and comprehensive urban forest policy and plan that addresses not just these specific concerns, but things like when trees are removed for development, who's responsible, where can they be replaced, what kinds of trees do we want to see, et cetera. I think we are excited about that administratively, and it was amplified by the children who were here sharing their passion for that project.
Well, I'm going to weigh in because I can't resist not saying trees bring joy. Yeah, thank you for the chuckle. I agree. We need to do both. So, and thank you for bringing this forward, Deputy Mayor, because June 4th is the date that the students had asked for, and I'm just looking at the calendar here. That's roughly a month from now. So I'd like it if we could do both, like direct administration to designate an area where these particular students could plant trees this year and come up with a long-term plan that we've heard from administration tonight. And maybe, and of course, that short-term plan can be something that works into something, hopefully, that, you know what I'm trying to say, right? No? Well, this short-term plant needs to be something that I want these kids to, this motion to bring joy to these kids too. This was a great initiative that they took the time out and were trying to get here again in COVID times and couldn't until whatever it was that date. And here we are months later, and now we're going to come up with it. And I agree with the direction, but I just think that we need to solve their short-term problem and have a long-term solution.
Yeah, thank you. Again, administratively, we're very happy that we can accomplish that independent of a motion. If council feels compelled to make a specific motion of that nature, that's certainly within their prerogative to do. And should the motion just capture the larger intent of the exercise, both what should happen soon as well as building that long-term outlook, I think that would be sufficient for us to accomplish that. I would very much agree that it would be really, I think, a fitting end to the hard work that class did to ensure that they get to put some shovels in the ground and be a part of that process.
They were, I believe, partnering with Sawmill, who was providing seedlings that were white spruce. Maybe I made that part up. I don't know. I think it's true. Thank you. There's 3 people that have verified that now. Okay, so do we, Councillor or Deputy Mayor Fateko, are you good with that direction?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I don't know if you need me to amend any sort of thing coming forward, but just that's basically my idea, is that the larger framework, I absolutely agree, needs to exist, but I would like, kind of like the mayor said, just to have something come up in the short term to get this going so that these things can happen. And even if they plant 5 trees, I think that they will feel fairly excited to be able to provide anything to the community.
Okay, Councillor Reid?
Yeah, just building on that short-term momentum, Mike, could we go ahead and declare that white spruce? That could happen pretty quickly, couldn't it?
Thank you. Yes, through the chair to Councillor Reid, that could happen as quickly as council wants to. I would recommend that you just give administration a little bit of time to just look at that and ensure that that's an appropriate activity. I don't want to get too carried away with that action, but just to be thoughtful about that. I don't think there's anyone who disagrees that that's very appropriate, but I wouldn't want to recommend that without being able to confidently say that we're not missing something that might be helpful as we consider that.
Yeah, just to be clear, my comment was that we would declare the white spruce Cochrane's official tree and nothing more than that. If that's complicated, then yeah, take what time you need.
No, I appreciate that, and thank you. Again, I do not intend to complicate that. That's a fairly simple and straightforward question. I think even just a moment to consider that would be appropriate, and bringing that back as part of a report that would include, I think, the declaration of the Arbor Day. I think we can accomplish that in relatively short order as part of it, and for me, it's really just being as thoughtful as we possibly can about the exercise.
Okay, so we need to vote on that. Understand what we're voting on. Okay, I was just going to try to clarify that, if I may. that the motion that is in your package is what we're going to follow through on, but with the understanding that there would be a short-term solution by administration to reach out to Mr. Belsey's class to find a nice place to plant trees before this June 4th or on this June 4th, and then in the future come back with a framework that might be, well, we're not attaching a date to that, but that's the understanding, independent of this. Did I help muddy the waters?
If I may, I honestly think with the understanding that's been discussed here that the notice of motion can stand as is, as long as I think council is satisfied with the context that administration has provided. I just offer that in the interest to keep this as straightforward as possible.
Nice try. We're gonna make it unstraightforward. Okay, you're clear? The notice of motion as written is what we're following through on with all that discussion. All those in favor of supporting Councillor Deputy Mayor's motion? Thank you. That carries. All right, well, we'll try to keep my short mayor's report brief. I'm just going to go backwards in time. Trade show, I think Councillor Wilson, thank you for your comments and your gratitude to our communications department. I thought the trade show was a good venue for us to get out and interact with residents. I really missed that. And I think Councillor McFadden, you coined the phrase earlier this evening about just that, I don't know how you said it, but just that real, honest, genuine feedback from residents that was kind of taken away from all of us for the 2 years of COVID. So it was really good to get back to just interacting with the public, and I do thank communication staff for setting that up for us. Rogers hometown hockey happened too on Saturday night, despite the weather and a little bit of, well, it was actually really chilly. The official attendance from Rogers was 1,957 people were down there on the parking lot watching Lanny McDonald and Mike Vernon sign autographs, and not one person asked me for an autograph. Thank you, Mike, for pointing that out. All these lineups to wait in, and yeah, not one. So not surprised. But thank you to all the town staff that pulled that off in short order. Again, we got that message very quickly. We reacted, and I'm grateful that we were able to pull that together and provide almost 2,000 people with a fun time for their families on Saturday night. Quick update from CMRB. The letter, I circulated the letter to all of you that I wrote to the minister with help from our staff, obviously. Specifically, Mr. Popoff, thank you for your support in that, on all the technical work that went into writing that letter. So now we wait for the minister to come back with what he says, and hopefully he will just make a decision and we can move on. Was that a few? And as things are ramping up, we're getting more busy, but I think these all happened on the same night. Cochrane had a fundraising or a membership drive and an announcement of the stewardship in partnership with the town around trail stewardship. And we had the library. Thank you, Councillor Nagel, for that. Maybe let you speak about that one. And the announcement of the new head librarian or executive director. I wasn't sure, or is it both of those? Executive director, thank you. And maybe a bit of an update from the rec center, the Spray Lakes Family Sports Center. They had their AGM that same day. They have appointed a new board member, Mr. Ken White. And maybe just as a bit of an update for council, there was we went through the audited financial statements, and I won't bore you with those, but I can circulate them. But just maybe a snapshot on where the rec center and how it's doing. Memberships as of 2021, at the end of 2021, and I might have gotten some of this wrong, but I don't think so. The end of 2021, there was 2,100 memberships. In February of 2020, there was 3,200 memberships. So trending from 32 to 2,100 during COVID. May of 2021, there was 0 because of all of the things to do with COVID. January of this year, they were back to 2,600 memberships. February 28, March 3,200, and as of April 27th, which was that day, they were at 3,300 memberships, which is an all-time high for the rec center. So Cochrane and area are really utilizing the Spray Lakes Family Sports Center. That is equating to 7,100 members currently. So it's similar to our budget, where we budgeted for slower times and no growth, et cetera, and realized a surplus. They budgeted similar and were expecting less growth in their memberships and have seen more. So the subsidization that they were budgeting is about 400,000 less than what they had contemplated in their budget. So I thought that was a good news story. I'm hopefully not taking away any of the thunder from the rec center, because I encourage them to have their own press release about this and share these stats with the community. I'm happy to answer any of those questions if there are any, but that is the extent of my report tonight. Councillor McFadden?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's it really, is great to get back out in the community and connect with people again. The trade show was great, and I know my calendar is filling up with more, one-on-one meetings and coffee requests, and it's great to get back to doing the job that way. I'm quite zoomed out. So it's great to see that, and there's really is so many things to celebrate right now. It was great to actually do the library meet and greet and see the initiatives and the momentum they're starting to build, and great news about the rec center. And kudos to the trade show was getting back into it, but it really felt like it was a success. And I appreciate the staff that helped set that up, and of course the staff that contributed your weekend time helping answer all the tough questions, although I think I got thrown under the bus for one of them. But overall, it was a really good weekend. I did want to give an update on the Parks and Rec Committee. That group right now is focused on the trail gap work. And so we've gone through and kind of identified what we were trying to accomplish with that. And I think we're sitting down this meeting. There's going to be a presentation of kind of identified trail gaps via GIS, so the town staff have partnered with us to help with that. So that the group's really starting to build some momentum and move forward with their projects, and I'm quite proud of the work they're doing. So I just wanted to provide an update there. As those meetings kind of fall on the fourth Tuesday, sometimes it gets out of sync between their meetings and our next council meetings, and I fail to provide an update, but it's a very passionate group, and I'm glad to be working with them.
Thank you for your report. Councillor Nagel.
Yeah, the only thing I'd add about the library meet and greet is, well, of course it was a great evening, but the message I think that was loud and clear for council, and I think that the board would ask me to bring to council and administrations at the library very much wants to get serious about discussions about the long-term planning for the space and capacity of the library. I think that probably doesn't come as a surprise to anybody. They have realistic expectations that they know we're not gonna have something built next year, but they want to get something on the books and start having serious conversations about it. One of the anecdotal comments that really stuck with me is they were talking about their story times that they have with kids, is that their story times are perpetually at wait list, and there are tons of families who are not able to get their kids in there. And it's an important thing for these young kids to be able to get out and meet some friends in the community, and then also find a love of learning in books while they're there. And that's something that's being denied to a whole bunch of families in Cochrane currently. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, and Executive Director.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Nagel. Councillor Wilson.
I just had a quick update from the FCSS Advisory Board. I guess before I do that, I'd just say thanks again for the trade show experience. It was a lot of fun, and I became kind of an amateur roads reporter. I felt like it was a lot of talk about the upcoming highway projects, and I answered as best as I could. That seemed to be the theme of the day. From the FCSS Advisory Committee, we have on it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and that's pretty poignant timing, I guess, this point in our world and society. This weekend we have Saturday, May 14th, 10 a.m. It's the Hike for Hospice in Cochrane, which is happening at Mitford Pond Park. They just wanted me to pass that along, and it seems like a great event and a good cause. So just to make everybody at the table aware of that. And we have a scavenger hunt coming up later in the month, but I'll do an announcement because we have one meeting before it on that. So thanks.
Okay. Thank you for that. Deputy Mayor.
Only one quick comment. It is McHappy Days, and I believe a few of us are going to be standing at McDonald's on Wednesday. So go to McDonald's, go support, buy a burger, buy whatever you need to, and it all goes to the Ronald McDonald House. So a great charity, and I think we've been doing it for a few years now. So
All of them.
yeah, all of them. So yeah, come on out and support. Buy yourself a Big Mac. Don't worry about your diet.
This commercial break brought to you by, all right, that is the extent of the council reports. Thank you. We do have an in-camera session tonight. Need a motion to go in camera. Councillor Reid, all those in favor of that? That carries. We'll take a 5-minute feed break, which means we're cutting the feed, not that we're gonna go eat.